Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. We're going to talk about Raw from November 29th, 2021, 4 days after Thanksgiving. Not a good crowd, not a good attendance record either. I think they got about 6,000 people. That's probably pushing it. That's probably rounding it up. It might have been more like 5 grand. Not really good. Of course, today is a really big travel day. So, I mean, it is what it is. But they could really have made everything better by absolutely making a better show and putting a better show out there. And I think they did okay. So Raw was a mixed bag. There was some really good stuff, some really bad stuff. The worst thing about it was the crowd not really getting into anything. So even though there wasn't a lot of people there, you still should have gotten people up for the things that they should have gotten up for. Not really. There was just kind of like a lot of casuals in the building on this show. And they woke up when they wanted to, which were at the weirdest point parts of the show. But they were chilling for the most part, you know. There wasn't a rowdy crowd. They weren't awful, you know, as far as trying to distract from the show. But they weren't completely present either. It's clear that, you know, Raw gave them indigestion in certain parts, which I can 100% agree with. So let's talk about the show. Seth Rollins starts the show bragging about not being unstoppable and announces the big match for day one, him versus Big E. He is then assaulted by Finn Balor, who beats him from pillar to post. Finn Balor then proceeds to have the upper hand when the match starts. Rollins wins the match with an eye poke, then a stomp. Okay. Sucks to be Finn Balor. Really does suck to be him. So following that match, Seth Rollins runs into Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens tells him that he was told that he was going to be the number one. He was going to get added to the day one match if he beat Big E tonight. Seth Rollins calls him a liar, goes to check it out with Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville. We do this back and forth. He was told, yes, Kevin Owens lied. At the same time, it sounds like a good idea. Rollins goes back to Kevin Owens, gloats. Kevin Owens once again says, you know what? Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to be getting a title match when I beat Big E. Seth Rollins then goes back to come on, man. Come on. Couldn't we have handled this in one segment? So Seth Rollins goes back and he's told, oh yeah, so eventually it will be happening. So it's almost as if Seth Rollins brought up the idea and then they just decided to go with it, which is the general idea of what they were trying to get through to us, is that they, you know, Kevin Owens, through lying, got himself in this title match. So then the main event happens. The show was pretty long at this point, even though it started out pretty good. The show had gotten long by this point. There was a lot of video packages and stuff. Big E starts, cuts a promo before the match, calls Kevin Owens a duplicitous scourge. And, yeah, he did that. He did that part for show. For show. In any event, Kevin Owens and Big E, they have a solid match. You know, they don't have bad matches. But, you know, people weren't really rocking with it. You know, it felt like it was missing something. And what it was missing is that Kevin Owens has no heat. Because now you have to ask the question, is he really even a heel now? You know, because they've eased up on a lot of the heelish nature of Kevin Owens. And now he seems to be right in that silly tweener pocket where people are okay because he's screwing around with Seth Rollins. So that's good. We like that he's fucking with Seth Rollins. That's a good thing. He hasn't done it since he attacked Big E. He hasn't done anything to Big E. So it's just kind of been him versus Seth Rollins, and that puts him in the babyface position because Seth Rollins is such a hated heel. So this makes no sense. Why put this guy in this position? Why turn him heel and he's not fully turned? You took the turkey out of the oven while it was still pink. Why not just turn the fucking guy heel and turn him heel? But because Kevin Owens doesn't have any heat, he's just in this match with Big E for no reason. And outside of an attack from like 3 weeks ago, which some people barely remembered, these two don't have anything to do with each other. So, while during the match, Kevin Owens goes outside the ring. He assaults Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins jumps up, gets into the ring, hits Kevin Owens a bunch of times, gets Big E disqualified. And because Kevin Owens won the match, it will be a triple threat match at day one. Seth, Kevin, Big E for the title. Okay. Sure. I'm guessing, if I had to guess, I would guess this is going to be the last hurrah for Kevin Owens, and maybe he's going to be on his way out. Similar to Dean Ambrose, similar to Daniel Bryan, we're just going to finish him off on top. We're going to feed him to one of our top guys. So which one is it going to be? Smart money would say feed him to Big E. That would be smart money. I'm thinking, it's hard to tell because who knows what they're going with WrestleMania. They're very light on suggestions for part-timers, so there's not like any chance of Cena showing up or The Rock showing up to save this whole thing. Nobody is really hot enough on Raw to win the Royal Rumble, and nobody's hot on SmackDown either, in order to jump ship to Raw and really shake things up in terms of becoming the world champion. I mean, there's really nobody. They really got nobody on Raw, and they're burning through talent, trying to keep guys barely relevant. Their only real option is because the only person with any steam or any momentum on Raw is Damian Priest. So what are you going to do? You going to do Damian Priest versus Big E? I wouldn't even do that. That's still doing an incredible amount of damage to both of those guys because they're both baby faces. So what option do you have? You could put the title on Rollins, but you still have a similar situation because you still have no baby faces. So Raw is just a muted mess of guys who, could be top guys. But then you also, sure, you have your AJ Styles and your Edges, but those guys are in their 40s. We should be looking at either solidifying Big E or moving on to someone else who, needs to push. And it's going to be very hard to decide which is which, So I'm going to guess Big E's going to retain in that match, but the triple threat stipulation tells me that there's going to be an opportunity there to title switch without beating Big E and then putting him back in the chase role. And then maybe Big E wins the Rumble, which is possible. Stupider things have been done, And of course, you still have the opportunity at that point to do Big E versus Roman. But I probably wouldn't do that personally. So they went an incredibly roundabout way of doing this by dropping little breadcrumbs throughout the show. But they ultimately got to Kevin Owens gets a title shot just for being obnoxious and getting on everybody's nerves. That's not good. Not good at all, man. Got to tell you that. Didn't like that one bit. What I did like, though, Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan had a dueling promo segment, a contract signing segment. The match will not be at day one. Their match will actually be next week, which tells me they probably have somebody of higher caliber ready than Liv Morgan, and she's just a stopgap opponent. So they cut promos on each other. And Becky Lynch says that she wanted to see if Liv had fire, and while she threw a good punch, one good punch is not going to be enough. And that Liv has got to stop holding back, or she's going to keep holding back, and she's never going to achieve anything. Then Liv said that she has control of herself. She can control her emotions, unlike Becky Lynch, who cried after her match with Charlotte. Then they took us completely out of the match to show video packages. But it's like, we don't need to see a video package of Becky crying. It's cool. Again, WWE tries to hold everybody's hand. And what they do is they're not going to mention something without showing it unless they absolutely cannot, or it involves some things that they would rather not show on the screen. So of course they took seconds to show Becky Lynch crying over this whole Charlotte thing. Becky gets really, really rattled at this. She starts pacing like a wild animal. And then Liv Morgan continues talking about Becky's new big fat contract is the reason why her friends are not there anymore. And that she's selfish. And you're not the Becky Lynch that I admired. And I'm not the Liv Morgan you gave advice to. Good stuff from Liv there. I know a lot of people were really tossed about the whole thing. Is your big fat contract is the reason why my friends aren't here anymore. Which, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I know some people seem to think budget cuts aren't a real thing. There's no real budget cuts. You need to look at everything else. It's like, yeah, you have to look at them expenditures. They talk about them revenues a lot. Nobody talks about them expenditures, especially talent expenditures. You know, in order for more people to get paid more money, some that money got to come from somewhere. And if, you know, wrestling is the department that we're talking about here, they got to have a talent budget. So, again, for those in the back who ain't been listening, even though I've been saying this for months, budgets are for different departments. If you got a talent budget and you're saying, looking at your talent roster and you're saying, okay, you know, talent want to get paid X amount of dollars. We need this talent. This talent wants to get paid X amount of dollars. We cannot, in good conscience, pay other talent this amount of money. So maybe they have to go away. You know, we bring in, I hate to put it this way, cheaper talent or least expensive talent or whatever the case may be. Maybe they're less experienced, that way they don't cost as much. Sure, whatever the case may be. But a lot of people are like, they didn't like this promo because of that part. Because she sort of blames the budget cuts on people like Becky Lynch and their fat contracts. I understand that point. I just disagree with it. Especially considering a lot of these people who do the arguing on that point think everybody can make $100 million at one time. And paying people what they deserve versus paying people what they actually bring in. And, you know, some people were getting paid more than they were bringing in. That was typical of WWE for a little while there. For a time, WWE was pulling on WCW and they were bringing in indie talent, paying them far more than they were making on independents. It just didn't make any business sense. But I see why people would say this was a bad part of the promo. I get why you would say that. I just disagree. I think budget cuts are perfectly fine. I think blaming it on people like Becky Lynch who are saying, you know, and Becky Lynch even responded like, some of us deserve to get paid. You know, like, and guess what? That is absolutely true too. You know, she wasn't lying. She wasn't lying. Then she said that the whole thing about her crying was a heated, emotional moment after a big match, and Liv wouldn't know anything about that. Liv don't know nothing about big matches. So then Liv Morgan says that Charlotte made you her number 2 and you want to make me yours. That's not going to happen. So Becky Lynch challenged her to a 10-man tag team match later that night. And like magic almost, the teams were already formed because there's only 10 women on the entire brand. But they, of course, just divided the heels and the baby faces. So later in the show, you had Team Liv Morgan, which is Liv Morgan, Dana Brooke, Rhea Ripley, Nikki Ash, and Bianca Belair, versus Team Bex, which was Becky Lynch, Zelina Vega, Carmella, Doudrop, and Tamina. During this match got off the fucking rails. They went 100% AEW in this match. Could not stand it. I could not tell who was legal and who wasn't. I did not know what was going on. I think I looked away for a second, and I just lost complete control of this match. Now, it wasn't like that from the beginning, though. Because when Nikki was in the match, she was the glue, right? Nikki is the undersized baby face. She was in there getting beat up. She was selling really well. She was showing some fire in terms of trying to stay alive, trying to tag out. And Carmella did a good job of cutting her off and really playing a really solid heel. It was doing good. Then the hot tag happened. They hot tagged with Rhea Ripley, who came in and went full Stan Hansen on Carmella. and knocked her goddamn block off, and things went downhill from there. Well, wait a minute though. Gotta give Rhea Ripley some credit. That was a hell of a fucking clothesline, dog. She clobbered Carmella, and Carmella was dazed. The only problem I had was everything stopped. Like, that's modern wrestling. Everything stopped. Rhea's trying to get her comeback in because that's what she's in for. She's in to do the hot tag, and Carmella is like, she on Dream Street. She can't even get up on her feet. Nobody else decides to get into the ring and feed. They're kind of looking like, is Carmella dead? Is she all right? And Carmella's like, ooh. So everything slows down, and then they decide to do the spot all over again. This, of course, after they figure out that Carmella is okay, they start the comeback all over again, which, of course, ruined the fucking match. And everything from there was the drizzling shits. Liv Morgan ends up pinning Tamina with the Oblivion. And after the match, the heels and the babyfaces continue to fight. Everybody paired off with their opponent, Bianca Belair and Doudrop, Liv and Becky, Zelina and Carmella versus Ripley and Nikki Ash, and Liv ended up dropping Becky, so that was pretty cool. Liv got to win the match. She got the pin for her team, which was good. That's a +1. And then she got to drop Becky, and Becky ended the segment on the ground with Liv Morgan standing up over her. That's a +3. We're gonna give her a +4 on this one. She looked decent in the promo segment. Her emotions were not there yet. She, even when talking about her friends, that was probably the most emotional part of the promo for Liv. But she's not used to being in this position. So, and she's not, the thing about people who are, being really critical about Liv and Tony, these people have never done this stuff before. Like, Liv Morgan's been around for a long time. She really has. But this is kind of like the first real feud she's ever been in. This is, WWE not using them and NXT not preparing them. Same thing with Toni Storm. When you're not prepared in NXT, because you don't do dueling promos, you don't learn how to emote, that kind of, you're so focused on the words, you're not really bringing the emotion in. And it does come across a little stilted, and it comes across a little weird. I think the promo was fine, and I think it makes sense that Liv was not really animated because she was talking about, at the same time, controlling her emotions and being able to control her emotions. And I think that was the saving grace for this segment, is that Liv was talking about controlling her emotions while kind of being unemotional, to a degree. And Becky Lynch is the opposite. She was being very emotional. She was, pacing. She was getting loud. She was interrupting. She was, trying to antagonize Liv Morgan and really couldn't do it. So, it was a fine segment, It was fine. I don't think it was the best segment. Don't think it was the worst. It was okay. For Liv's first real segment of its kind, it was a good try. We get RK Bro, which gave us the cursed image of Randy Orton in a brown wig. Oh, God. Which RK Bro is just, all of this stuff has to lead to Randy Orton giving Riddle an RKO. And I'm pretty sure this is where we're going for WrestleMania, is the explosion of RK Bro. That's got to be where we're going, right? I know Randy Orton is not wrestling in a fucking tag team match with Riddle at WrestleMania. I know it ain't happening, right? So, they killing me with this. RK Bro defeat the Dirty Dogs. As much as I like Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, they're just two good workers. They seemingly are devoid of personality. Even though both of them can talk, even though both of them have charisma, they just aren't given anything. And furthermore, why are they even getting a title shot? What the hell have they done? They seem to have lost every match they've seen them in. Edge. So let's talk about Edge, because our boy The Miz is back. Edge and The Miz, they decide to go out there and do a little promo battle of their own. Edge is coming out there talking about being on Raw, being in Long Island, and everything is great. And he's talking about, fresh opponents, and he names some opponents. And then the Miz's music, strikes. Miz strolls out there with Maurice. He's wearing this really gaudy, the headband is so much. The headband is what really puts it over for me. Like, it being really, crystally white is perfectly fine. Maurice looks phenomenal, always. She always looks good. But the Miz would look fine if he wasn't wearing that fucking headband. The headband is too much. Somebody needs to take that goddamn headband from him. Over gimmicked. In any event, Miz notes that Edge mentioned all of these guys on the roster except him, and that he is not on Edge's radar. To which Edge says, look, I thought you were still doing Dancing with the Stars. I thought you were still covering yourself like a genie and dancing. And the Miz is, it's like he's been out promoting WWE, showcasing and elevating what it means to be a WWE superstar. And, I'm not on your radar. And he says that the only reason I lost Dancing with the Stars is because the WWE Universe, who is supposed to be the most loyal and passionate fan base in the world, didn't vote for me, didn't support me. So, which was great, because WWE did try to get the fans to vote for The Miz. They did. They tweeted about it. They talked about it on the show. They did whatever they could to get people to vote for The Miz. People didn't vote for The Miz. So, The Miz lost. So, Miz then cuts down Edge and says that, Edge used to be great, but he surpassed him a long time ago. 6 months ago, Miz was the WWE champion. When was the last time you won a title? When was the last time you did anything, Edge? So Miz is, of course, bigging himself up, making himself sound great. Miz, when Maurice is there, is on a different level. All of Miz's best performances involve Maurice being at his side. There's something about Maurice being there. I think she increases his confidence. She also adds a lot to his character in terms of his visual presentation. Miz is always stronger when he has somebody else with him. Somebody for him to bounce off of. That's the truth with motor mouth characters in general, which is why Roddy Piper always has somebody with him or somebody to bounce off of, which is why they thought he would be great on commentary. He's not, by the way. But, when you have a motor mouth character, they work better when they bouncing off somebody. So, Miz, Morrison, Miz Big Show, Miz R-Truth, then Miz Sandow, and now Miz and Maurice. So, but Maurice typically, I should say, takes him to the next level. So he was really good here. And so Edge made a couple of digs at Miz, about his Dancing with the Stars appearance and, him, caring about that stuff. And then he gave Miz some credit. He says, I definitely can see, the respect that you deserve. You made it here from Tough Enough. And you main evented WrestleMania. And yeah, I jerked the curtain that year. The year you main evented WrestleMania, I was in the first match. Yeah, that happened. And he talked about you went from reading your lines off of your hand to main eventing WrestleMania. And he said that, this respect, you looking for a pat on the back. And he talked about himself and how he's been fighting and scratching to get back here. And he says, Miz, yeah, you got people in other companies using your name to get cheap reactions. You live rent-free in a lot of heads. But you also use WWE as a springboard for your next venture, for your next reality TV show, your next dance competition. You're not in the business for the business. You're in the business to be famous. And I liked most of that. I like anything that involves the two characters are in the ring. I know some people really like the AEW nod and that kind of stuff. I liked when Edge says that Miz's success is living rent free in people's heads. I think we could have kept that in there because that part is true. There's a lot of people who are jealous of The Miz, who hate The Miz because they cannot fathom that The Miz is actually successful in this business without being a big tough guy or a physical marvel. He's over based purely off of his work ethic and charisma and his ability to talk and his ability to improve and his desire to always improve and being a good ambassador for the WWE. The Miz is the guy that, you look at him, he doesn't get in any trouble. He got no DUIs. He doesn't get popped for roids. He doesn't, there's nothing like that on the Miz's record. He's just a straight up company guy. And that bothers a lot of people, because a guy like him shouldn't succeed. It should be big, tough, beer drinking guys, the Bruiser Brodies of the world. Those guys should be the world champions. The Terry Funks, the I live and breathe pro wrestling. Those guys should be the rich guys with the hot wives and all that kind of stuff. But it's a guy like The Miz. And people do hate that. The Miz's success alone really bothers people. Which is why the Hollywood Miz character actually works. People think that it's about his bad movies. But it's actually just him rubbing his success in your face. Mainly because he only has success because you hate him so much. If people were indifferent to The Miz, he wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. But because The Miz is so hated that you can name drop him in AEW and get a reaction, a big reaction at that, then it justifies Miz's existence. He could continue. The Miz, when the last time The Miz won a match? And he just appears in this segment and is able to hang with Edge as if he deserves to be there. If you look at the records or whatever the fuck, go on Cage Match, and when the last time The Miz won a match, I couldn't even tell you. I think The Miz has lost every match since he was the champion. He probably hasn't won a match since. But it doesn't matter. Because he can go in there and cut a promo and hang with Edge and seem like he belongs there. And it's a fresh match, too. It's completely new. It's completely different. It's something I didn't even expect to see. But I noticed that they took almost the entire structure of the AEW promo. The CM Punk came back and mentioned all of these guys that he wanted to wrestle. He didn't mention me, though. Because he's dodging me. He knows that he's not on my level. That eats me alive. Or that, or CM Punk would say that's burning you up. He's reading MJF's mind. In the Miz Edge promo, Miz just says that it bothers him. Are you saying I'm not on your level? I'm surpassed you. That insecurity comes out and he vocalizes it himself. But it's essentially the same character thing. And I think that was interesting. I think that should have been as far as we went with it. Them saying you're going to use your name to get cheap pops in other companies. That's just going to mean that CM Punk's going to say something on Wednesday because he's got to, and you got two old guys in Edge and CM Punk going to snipe at each other from across the globe, and to me, it just doesn't make, it's just, you're selling an angle that you're not going to pay off. There is no payoff to this. And that's why I don't like it. Why mention people who are not there? Like when Edge said that, you go off and do your dancing routines and leave your friends to get fired. And The Miz was like, boop. He could have just said we weren't partners anymore. So therefore he should have, get good or whatever the case may be. A lot of people didn't like that either. They don't like that WWE is using the releases as part of storylines. But again, people also hate when WWE ignores things and acts like things didn't happen. So it's a double-edged sword. Either you like when they mention real life stuff or you don't. I personally didn't mind the dig at John Morrison. John Morrison's a good dude. He probably understood it, didn't take it personally. But it also speaks to The Miz's character that The Miz cares more about himself and his personal success than he does about anything else. About his friendships, about wrestling, about anything. And Edge talked about his love of wrestling without even mentioning the word wrestling. He just said, I did everything to get back here. And that's here is in the ring. Here is the wrestling business. While The Miz cares about everything but wrestling. So it tells you about these two characters. Edge is all about desire. It's all about grit. It is the exact same stuff he's been preaching since he came back. And The Miz is the exact same stuff he's been preaching since before he left. He's must see. He's doing reality TV shows. He's a big superstar. He's bigger than everything. The matches and stuff like that don't matter. And I thoroughly enjoyed this segment. I thought this segment ruled. And there was no try hard, edgy stuff in it. It was some fair digs, I think. Edge still pulled promo 101 and putting Miz over and then cutting him down. Put Miz over, talking about how his success and his work ethic and all that kind of stuff, and then cut him down by saying The Miz only really cares about his success in outside ventures, not his success in wrestling. So most people will walk away from this segment saying to themselves, Edge responded to AEW's thing because, they're going to try to get AEW trending on Twitter. They probably did. Even though he didn't say the words AEW, he didn't say the word CM Punk. He alluded to those things. And to be quite honest, WWE did these things in ways that I feel like are more subtle because you don't want to give away that free promotion. And the smart fans in the arena, responded. The people who were casuals were kind of like, I wonder what that meant. And it went right over their heads, which is why you don't do it. You don't mention number 2. They have half the audience that you have. Why mention them? Why say it at all? In any event, it makes sense that, Edge is going to, but it seemed like the elephant in the room though. And maybe this is the one time I can make an exception because it was the elephant in the room. They mentioned Miz on Wednesday and it's like, like magic. The Miz appears on Monday. Like, they're chanting for me on Wednesday. Okay, I'll show up on Monday. Let's see what happens. People like The Miz, huh? Here he is. Smart decision on WWE's part to bring The Miz back right as he was trending on Twitter for not being there. And it was also very smart for them to give him Edge. It's a fresh opponent. Somebody from that era when Edge was last there. So it's not like he's a completely new guy. It's a let's be honest, it's a win for Edge. He needs wins. And it's a stopgap opponent. Him and Edge can go back. Miz and Edge can go back and forth for 6 weeks, no problem. They didn't use their best stuff on each other. And to me, it didn't go 20 minutes. It went a little bit longer than it probably should have, but it ended, I think, a lot better when The Miz just kind of looked like he was going to fight and was like, no, I'm not going to fight you. But this ought to be fun. I am really interested in a Miz Edge match for some reason. I'm interested in it because it's fresh. He's never done it before, I don't think. Have they even been in the same ring before outside of like a Royal Rumble or something? I'm sure there's a lot of cage match nerds looking it up. Like, oh, they wrestled at 2008 in a tag team match or something like that. I don't know, man. All I will say is Miz rises to the level of his competition. You put Miz in there with top guys, Miz becomes a top guy. You put Miz in there with mid-carders, Miz becomes a mid-carder. That adaptability is untouchable. It's tremendous shit, if you're being honest. Like Miz can we've seen Miz get in there with the Daniel Bryans and the Cenas and be able to hold his own. So him hanging with Edge should not come as a surprise to anybody, and yet it does. People are still shocked that Miz can talk. That's all he fucking literally does. But the thing is, all the silly Miz TV segments leading to Miz losing in 2 minutes to some nobody just for Miz to come back the next week and do the same thing all over again. That stuff has people believing that the Miz can't really go. The Miz can't really do it. But if you see Miz hanging there with Bryan Danielson in the ring, then it's like, okay, he gets in there with Dolph Ziggler and he can hang and have good matches. Yeah, Miz can get you there. You know, that's why I'm one of the full throat. Not gonna say that. One of the full backers of the Miz. You know, I like the Miz, man. Like, how can you hate a dude who came from being kicked out of the locker room, not respected by anybody, you know, through Tough Enough where he was bullied, who fucked up on national TV, embarrassed himself numerous times on national television, who fought and scratched and main evented WrestleMania, and then is still around 10 years later, win the title again, and is still on a flip of a coin, can get back into that main event spot, in that main event mode, and not look out of place. Yes, The Miz looked like a cartoon character next to Edge. That part about it is why I talked about the way Miz was dressed earlier. Because he was so loud, because he was so gaudy, and Edge is so, you know, he's what, 46, 48 or something like that. You know, he's very conservative as far as, you know, being dressed up. He looks like a dad. And The Miz comes out there and he looks like something out of a comic book. You know, it's so loud. But at the same time, it is a great visual representation of the characters. The Miz is bombastic. The Miz is loud. The Miz is in your face. Edge is a lot more grittier, a little darker, a little bit more on the physical side. You know, this ain't wrestler Edge like in the past where he probably would have been a little bit louder himself. This is almost PTSD Edge where he constantly talks about everything he had to go through to get back here. Completely different scenario. I probably should have talked about this in a different video instead of trying to make one video and fit all of this in, because I didn't know I had this much to say on this subject. But it wasn't really that's why I don't write scripts, because, like, you know, when I start riffing sometimes I lose my, but I really enjoyed this. You know, I'm not going to go back and watch it 100 times like other people will and try to nitpick it, but I enjoyed it for what it was. You know, I thought it was cute that they decided to steal from AEW the exact structure of the CM Punk MJF match, and they're essentially going to have that match, I think, a week. If CM Punk and the Miz, Jesus, if CM Punk and MJF is going to be at Battle of the Belts, then day one is going to be 1 week before Battle of the Belts. At least I think so. It's January the 8th, right? Or is it January the... Yeah, January the 8th, I think, is Battle of the Belts. If that CM Punk versus MJF match is going to be a Battle of the Belts, day one is going to be a week before that. So that means they're going to have their version of the CM Punk MJF match a week before CM Punk and MJF have their match. And it's an interesting little thing that they did there. But enough about that. Because there's still a lot of stuff for us to talk about. And we'll probably be here for an hour. Who knows? AJ Styles. So AJ Styles is pretending to be blind by the smoke enthusiasts and the Street Profits who said they blinded him. The smoke enthusiasts defeated the Alpha Academy. AJ Styles, he stopped being blind for a moment, tried to attack Montez Ford, got kicked. Amos did not catch AJ Styles, and he was upset about this. And as he laid down on the ground, he, was talking to Amos about, hey, what happened? Why you didn't help me, man? And Amos was like, look, man, I mean, what I'm supposed to do? And, it would have been nice to see what was going to, transpire there. But they're setting up the seeds of breaking up Amos and AJ Styles, which, of course, doubles us back to Edge, who said to AJ Styles, and he did a little wink and a nod, like, yeah, that's what I'm doing for WrestleMania. So now that means we got to start separating AJ Styles from Amos, So we don't need Amos for AJ Styles to have a match with Edge. We don't need it. It would be nice. It would be good for the heat, but I don't think we want Edge beating up Amos. I don't think we want that. So we could separate Amos from AJ Styles. Let AJ run on his own. I think AJ has proven that he can hang it on his own, the OC or whatever was good for Cena. It was good for Undertaker because they both were much bigger than he is. But Edge is much older than he is. I think he's probably 4 years older than AJ Styles, maybe 6 years older. So it ought to be fun. And Edge is not that big anymore. I think he's kind of lost some height due to the neck surgeries and stuff like that. So I really, really need that Edge and AJ Styles thing. And I'm thinking they're going to run that for WrestleMania. And I'm down as fuck for it. I'm down as fuck for it. And no lie. I'm all in on that. Okay. So AJ and Amos are showing dissension. They're going to be breaking up soon. I'm not sure Amos needs to be on his own. Yes, I did see Undertaker say Amos is the next Andre the Giant. Yes, I think it's ridiculous. I think he was trying to put the young guy over. I thank him for that, putting over the young Nigerian prince. But there's no way Amos is the next Andre. I just don't see it. And I wouldn't have done that to him. That's too much pressure. That's like when people said that Angel Garza is the next Eddie Guerrero. Like, don't do that to people, man. Don't do that. Never do that. That's why I get me so frustrated about AEW. They be like, oh, he's the next such and such and such and such. I'm like, no, don't do that. Because then people are going to look and say, oh, that's it. No, let these people develop. Let them do their thing. Let other people come to like them on their own. Rather than you trying to brainwash them or compare them to all-time greats. It's like, no, don't do that. So I think Undertaker he meant well, but I think that he was out of his mind to say that he was the next Andre. Okay. I'm going to save the Austin Theory Vince McMahon stuff until we get to the end. Damian Priest defeats Apollo Crews. Commander Aziz. My Commander Aziz. Got caught cheating, got ejected. Damian Priest beat Apollo Crews literally a couple of seconds later. Not good. I didn't really like this. Apollo Crews has kind of been off his game. I don't think they've been thrilled about using him on Raw. I think that this match only occurred because they had built it up, and they really would have rather moved on with somebody else. To me, we got in a situation here with Damian Priest where he needs some real opponents. He needs somebody that can elevate him, or that he can elevate in this spot. Damian Priest just beating rando opponents. This is WWE, man. Unless you're going to be very heavily character focused, like John Cena when he was doing the open challenges and it was like NXT talent coming out there to wrestle and stuff like that. Unless you're going to do something like that, the open challenge idea is moot. AEW is doing it okay with the TNT title. I actually enjoy the open challenge concept. I don't have a problem with it. I had a problem with the fucking ranking system and it not doing what it's supposed to do. In WWE, I have a problem with them not having fucking contenders. There are no contenders for any of these goddamn titles, and there's nobody with any fucking momentum in which to challenge for any of these titles. Somebody said to me, why is Apollo Crews getting a title shot? He hasn't won any matches on Raw. I'm like, he won as many matches on Raw as Jay Lethal did. Like, let's be honest here. Damian Priest has been running open challenges for a while now, and Apollo Crews basically, accepted his open challenge, but just didn't want to have the match at that particular point in time. So, whatever. Hopefully they don't do this match again. This match was not up to the Apollo Crews standards. The guy is a really good worker, but I don't think this match was particularly very good. Also, the crowd did not care because he hadn't been on TV in a long time. And yes, I know he's been there, but he hasn't been building up any heat. Hasn't been doing anything to Damian Priest. He hasn't touched him. Hasn't cut him down. Hasn't done anything. Again, Apollo Crews was so good on SmackDown earlier this year. And out of nowhere, as soon as he won the Intercontinental title, it went straight into the toilet. It's almost like, okay, we played that entire character arc out, and there is no second act. There was no second idea. And now it's, okay, he's just comic book villain. And it seems to run his course, Hopefully they can save his career and not fire the fucking guy by getting rid of that fucking accent and keeping the Nigerian Prince, Golden Lions thing, but just have him go back to talking like he's normal. going back and, and doing something, tweaking this shit, But it's not looking good for the boy. I can tell you that much. The Mysterios defeat Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander in a match that nobody absolutely cared about, because the question was, why was this match even happening? Let alone, if nothing was on the line, of course. Just a match to have a match. Veer Mihan is still coming. He's still coming. It's been 2 months or whatever. I'm guessing they're going to change his look. I saw a picture of him on Twitter where he was wearing a suit. He still had the wild hair, but he was wearing a suit. He looked good. Looked very interesting in the, with the big Indian dude in the suit. Looked sharp. It could be interesting. A nice little striking of, when he's ready to fight, he's in his, I don't want to call it tribal thing, but just call it cultural garb, and then when he's not wrestling, he's in his suit and tie and he's very westernized. That could be pretty cool if that's decided what they wanted to go with and just add layers to that character like that. But he has to not get fired first. And to be quite honest, I think he's on the cusp. The guy's been still coming for 2 fucking months. And they've been showing the same vignette for 2 fucking months. The same vignette. They haven't even added anything to it. He doesn't even talk. Nothing. And what happened to Elias? Since we're on the record, since we're talking about people disappearing, what the fuck is Elias? Whatever. I don't know, man. Raw is doing some really weird stuff. They had a random Lashley vignette where he talked about his background. How he got into wrestling. How he was a high school wrestler and a college wrestler, and he was a wrestler in the Army in his early days, and they showed clips of his early days in WWE. And you know what? I forgot a lot of that stuff. Him crushing the side of that cage and on top of Umaga. That fucking ruled. I forgot all about that. I don't know what they're trying to get at here. Are you trying to turn Bobby babyface? Because he's a babyface in my book. All right? He's always been a babyface in my book. The Almighty. I fucks with Lashley. Everybody knows that. So I was kind of surprised to see this random vignette, which is something you should have shown when he was the champion. Maybe even if they were to do like a celebration after he won the title, it would have been a nice thing to put on the screen just to have him talk about his life story. But here it is, 2 months or whatever after he lost the title, and just randomly we got Lashley vignettes. What are we doing? And we're talking about his background and we're talking about his life. Why? What's going on here? But I can't say that it was bad. It was awesome. It ruled. It was great. I just wanted to know why. Just want to know why. All right, so now we got to talk about Vince McMahon and Austin Theory. I don't know if this was a babysitting job for Vince or if this was a kidnapping, but Vince wanted Austin Theory to sit and watch Raw with him. And they just said to sit in Vince McMahon's office and watch Raw. And occasionally they would go back to the office and Vince would, what do you think about the show? And Austin Theory, it was great. I really enjoyed it. You think you think he expected that? You think he expected that? And Austin Theory, no, I don't think he expected that at all. What about surprises? It's a surprise. You have to surprise people, and then if you expect a surprise, then it's not a surprise. But if you expect a surprise and then it happens, then it's a surprise. And Theory is just kind of going with it. He's like, sure, whatever. This is great. It was great watching the show with you, Mr. McMahon. And he goes to shake Vince's hand, and Vince slaps fire out of Austin Theory. I mean, it was like the main ingredient started to play after he smacked him. I mean, he smacked him and like Jimi Hendrix chords started to play. Like, it was wild. He smacked the shit out of this guy. That was an Inoki God slap. Why would he do that? Why would he slap this kid? So, he slapped the shit out of this guy. It was great, by the way. I'm not saying like it was a bad thing. The shit was fucking awesome. Okay, it was fucking awesome. He smacked the shit out of him. I'm just like, okay, Vince has taken a personal interest in Austin Theory. And his character has taken a personal interest in Austin Theory. And he's trying to teach Austin Theory something about expecting the unexpected. And, of course, he threatened to kill him for stealing his egg. And if you ever steal from me again, I'll kill you. Which, if you ever steal from me again, I'll kill you. I believe it, too. Vince rules, man. These segments were weird. So it's hard to tell if Austin Theory has like a pistol held to his head outside the screen where he can't get away, or if Vince is being punished by making him babysit this kid. In any event, Austin Theory gains a lot doing segments with Vince McMahon, because people are always going to be interested in what Vince is doing and why Vince is on television and what he's going to do in terms of him helping Austin Theory. Him slapping Austin Theory, though, should have told you, if it didn't, should have told you Austin Theory is going to be the guy. They're really going to do something with him now. I don't think he's in any danger of getting that release. He's going to do something real fucked up to get fired, because Vince is taking a personal interest in him. He's a young guy. They've always liked him. That's why they didn't fire him during the whole speaking out, so they just moved him back to NXT and let the heat die down. And this is a good spot for him. I just want to know what the payoff is. And that's always been the issue with WWE, is they never really got to the appropriate payoff. We got to get to the payoff before I say whether it's good or bad overall. Usually Vince being in segments with you is a good thing. Vince doesn't really do segments with garbage competitors or guys that don't go anywhere. Usually if he does anything with you, it's because he sees something in you. And especially if you're a young talent who is untested and unproven. And this reminds me a lot of the Drew McIntyre Chosen One type of thing. Especially with the slap. That's why I called it the Inoki God slap. It's because, all those people in Japan, they get lined up to get smacked by Inoki. The only one who didn't get in line and got smacked by Inoki was Nakamura. But in any event, these guys, he gets smacked by Vince. That's like a kiss, man. So I'm thinking he might end up being the guy to take the belt off of Damian Priest. All of that is very possible. But I think that this is, the making of another Chosen One type of gimmick, where Vince sees something in Austin Theory as a person and says, okay, look, I'm about to try to make this kid. About to try to make this kid personally. I'm going to work with him personally. And you know what? There is no better seal of approval than being able to work with Vince McMahon. I'm trying to think of somebody. Has anybody outside of Shane worked with Vince McMahon and never become WWE champion? That's a trivia question in the comment section. See, Vince has had matches with CM Punk. He's had matches with Stone Cold Steve Austin, obviously. He had matches with Undertaker. He had a match with Triple H. He had a match with Shawn Michaels. He had matches with Lashley. He had matches with, who else did he have a match with? I don't know, but, Stephanie. Stephanie did become world champion, though. She was a women's champion. And that was before she wrestled Vince. So Vince usually works with people and they get a push. He worked with Big Show. They were partners, though. So Vince doesn't, Drew McIntyre, it took a while for Drew and Lashley because they got that, let's call it a sabbatical when they both left and ended up being brought back. But they got there, So Vince doesn't really hand out his seal of approval that often. It's usually a couple of times per generation. So, Austin Theory might be the last one. You never know. So this might be pretty cool, and it's a lot of responsibility to not fuck this up. So Austin Theory, better be paying attention, man. Because I know a lot of the hate going to come in. As soon as they says Austin Theory is the next guy, that hate is coming. So he better be ready. Because you got speaking out stuff going on, and the general, everybody hates WWE, and everybody hates when they crown a guy. So if Austin Theory starts to get like a mega push and he wins like the Royal Rumble or something like that, the hate will flow. it's gonna flow like fresh river water. So you got to be ready for it, and I'm interested in where this is going. So Raw was a mixed bag. I like the Liv Morgan, Becky Lynch stuff, Edge Miz stuff, the Vince McMahon, Austin Theory stuff. All that stuff was good. The Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens stuff, they could have kept that and they could have shrunk it down to one segment. I didn't really care for the match either. The 10-woman tag was fine up until the point where Carmella got KO'd. Then the match just went full AEW and I hated it. A lot of the other matches were really pointless, stupid. So, I'm waiting for Raw to kick into high gear and start its major push towards something. And it has not happened yet. It's in a holding pattern. And I don't like it. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm just glad Raw doesn't make me want to do bad things. Like smoke a cigarette or something like that. It ain't got that bad. The show sucks, but it ain't making me want to drink or smoke a cancer stick or something like that. So like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.